Hi, everyone, and welcome to Sprout Chat. I'm your host, Joe Huber, and I have with me my co-host, Olivia Jepson.
Hey, everyone.
I'm the Customer Community Strategist here at Sprout Social.
And I'm our social media specialist. I'm here to share some of my insights and your insights, so please share how you would approach each question too.
Sprout Chat is here to help us all grow together. We heard your feedback and adjusted our format so that we're just here on YouTube Live right now, and then we'll all head over to Twitter at 2 p.m. for the Twitter storm together.
For now, you can let us know what you think about some of the questions and give us your take in the chat to the right.
Think of this as your masterclass for the month. One of the best ways to learn is to participate. So please share your own insights, experiences, takeaways, ask questions, and most importantly, take this time as an opportunity to practice your craft and make new connections with one another. Today's topic is elevating your social strategy. You should walk away with some really great insights and tactics to implement right away. Before we do the interview, we like to start with an icebreaker. Since we're interviewing Joe from Twitter, tell us in the YouTube chat what your favorite Twitter handle is to follow. What's yours, Olivia?
There's so many brands I love following, but the one account I always go back to is Lin-Manuel Miranda's. He has a series called Good Morning and Good Night where he just shares little bits of inspiration to start and end your day, which is really delightful. There's also books, so definitely check it out.
Nice. It's like following the real Alexander Hamilton.
Oh, for sure. All the inspo.
Yeah.
What's your show?
I'm like you. I follow a ton of brands on Twitter. I love Twitter. I love it for the conversation. But right now I'm actually feeling a lot of the Chicago cultural stuff. So I love the Adler Planetarium, Shed Aquarium, Field Museum. But if I have to pick one, I'm going to go with @Sue the T-Rex right now. They do a great job with it. It always has me in stitches. So funny. And they do an amazing job of giving personality to this animal that's been dead for millions and millions of years and bringing it back to life.
Yeah, I love when brands do that, especially Sue the T-Rex. I also think that the NHL does a really good job of this with the Stanley Cup account and giving this iconic trophy a personality.
Yeah, personality is so huge and social. And we want to see your personalities right here, right now. Right, Olivia?
Oh, yeah. So I'll pull some of our favorite insights from the conversation. Again, that's right here. And if you love some of Joe's ideas, make sure to share them back with your team. You can access this recording on our YouTube channel. So turn on our post notifications and smash that subscribe button. Shout out to Safi Nygaard, who's one of my favorite YouTubers that always says that. I'll be back, but right now I'll be over in the chat engaging with all of you.
All right, so that's where she's going. We'll see you soon, Olivia. And the last thing that I wanted to let you all know about is our Facebook group, which is appropriately named #SproutChat. Feel free to check it out later for resources and to connect with one another. Now, let's get this chat started. Allow me to pass it over to Joe Wadlington to introduce himself. Joe, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead and give us a brief intro about you.
So my name is Joe Wadlington, and I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains in Tennessee. So I was surrounded by storytelling culture from the very beginning. It's not surprising that I wanted to be a writer. I have written my entire life. I went to Butler University, and I got my major in creative writing. And my first job was as a ghost mommy blogger for an SEO firm. So I wrote about 4 to 6 blog articles a day about my children. I am not a mother. I will likely never be a mother. It was an incredible exercise for a young writer and budding marketer to start getting in creating digital content at a huge scale. I worked at an art museum, and then I moved to San Francisco, where I worked as a mom at a different company, and then I was immediately laid off, which is such a welcome to San Francisco tech to then lose your job. So I started going to networking events, saying I was a social media consultant and a writer, and I realized on the bus to one of them that I had misspelled my last name. My last name is Wadlington. It's not common, so it's had a red squiggly line underneath it for my entire life. And so I get to this event, I have all my freshly printed, wrongly spelled business cards, and I just pulled out a Sharpie and I added the caret symbol and the N, and I would hand it and say, I'm an editor.
Yeah.
And so that's where it started. I did that for a few years in San Francisco, and here you get so many tech and small business clients, companies that only have a few people. So by the time I was applying for my job at Twitter 4 years ago, I had already written for hundreds of small businesses, helping them have social strategies, content calendars, find their brand voice, design their logo, copy, edit their product descriptions, all sorts of things. And then I started at Twitter 4 years ago as a copywriter, and now I'm the global creative lead. So my job is to do all of those things for our premium content, as well as our offices around the world. So we operate in 8 different languages. I take meetings in 8 different time zones and help to keep everyone consistent on brand, and also feel like they're resourced and that they have the creative resources they need to market Twitter the best that they can.
So you're not very busy then, is what I'm hearing.
A little busy, but you know, that makes it fun.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I got to say, you got a great name, Joe. Now, before we jump into the questions, let's go back to our icebreaker. So, Joe, what's your favorite Twitter handle to follow?
Right now, I really love the Creative Independent, and their handle is at the Creative INDP. So I'm assuming that's pronounced Creative Indep. And what they provide is a lot of resources for creative independent people. So if you have that side hustle, if you've gone freelance, if you're thinking about it, then their blog articles are some of the most empathetic things I have ever seen. Stuff like, how do you write a book when you have a full-time job? How do you actually get writing after you've already sat down? And one thing I really love is their tweets are so experimental. They do a lot of the tilde sign, a lot of hyphens, a lot of emojis, arrows. So they really get into that using the keyboard to create art. And it's a really nice disruptive tweet that flies through my timeline whenever they upload. So,
I love that. That's great insight, and very, very important for everybody listening too. That's another way to elevate your social strategy, which is our topic. So I think we've made them wait long enough. Should we jump into some questions?
I would love to.
All right, let's jump into question number 1. Okay. Why should you use data to strengthen your strategy?
So if you like data, congratulations, baby. You're on Twitter. You did it. It's the data Olympics. Every tweet has a little bar graph in the corner. And Twitter is the first time that I heard friends look at their content and say, oh, that didn't perform well. And these are not data people that know things like quick click-throughs, and they're looking at views. And so every single tweet gives you a data point that you can use to strengthen your strategy. Yeah. And if you're not using those data points, then you are effectively losing time and resources, because they are telling you what people like the most, what time of day your audience is alive, the type of content they want to read and they're going to react to. And so if you do not do a retro, follow up and look at that data that the tweets can provide you, or that your Sprout Social or analytics dashboard can show you, then you're going to waste time and resources making content that won't perform as well.
Yeah, so data is obviously a very important thing in social. It's such a powerful piece. You mentioned it a ton, that Twitter gives you so much data, and it's something that we focus on a lot. Obviously, being a social media management company, is when we're talking to our customers, love to them about. We came out with Sprout Index recently. It's something that we'll make sure to put in the YouTube chat. Click on, but yeah, like Twitter is so data heavy. I can't agree with you enough that if you are in social and you're not using data, you're missing out. So, all right, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, people often ask, like, how will I know what works, or how do I know what to tweet? And my answer is always just tweet it first. And then it will be very clear pretty quickly if people loved it or not. And that can be so valuable. You have your test group all the time.
Yeah. Get a baseline metric and then go from there. Love it. All right. Question 2. How does qualitative feedback feed your strategy?
So qualitative feedback, of course, is the other side of that. Someone can get so excited about data that they end up overcorrecting. And as marketers, we've all had that meeting where we want to do something new. We have a great idea, and the leadership is not willing to budge because you haven't done it before.
Yeah.
And you have to say at the beginning, how will this perform? How will this go? How do we know it will be successful? And you don't, because you haven't tried it before. And so what I would say with qualitative stuff is qualitative feedback can just be your gut. If you have a room of qualified marketers and they consume good marketing all the time, and you know that you feel like it's going to work, that can be enough. And one thing my team does is we always have one piece of experimental content brewing. Something that is new, we can't measure yet, or we don't know how to measure it yet. And it can be tough. But by risking that experimental content, we'll often find things later on that worked. And by not having to overinvest to justify, to figure out benchmarks before we start, then if it doesn't work out, we didn't waste a lot of time. And in fact, it can help our strategy going forward. Knowing what doesn't work is just as helpful.
Yeah. So at the very beginning, you talked about, like laddering these different pieces of data up to your boss. We just had an article in our Insights blog. We'll make sure we add that into the YouTube chat as well. That is all about just talking to your boss, and I think it's 9 different statistics.
Oh, that's so helpful.
Yeah, and it's really important and powerful. So yeah. All right, moving on to the next question. All right. What are the best practices for creating content that feels fresh?
So you have to first familiarize yourself with content that feels stale.
Okay.
If you don't know what people in your industry are already doing, then you can't know if you've evolved. So one of my favorite Twitter tricks is lists. Twitter lists are back. I feel like years ago, everyone was doing them on Follow Friday, and now they've fallen off a bit, but you can make a private list. You can make a private list on Sprout Social, and with that, you add every single account that could possibly be considered your peer, as well as a lot of accounts that you think are just really incredible at marketing, at jumping on a trend, at phrasing something, coming up with inventive tweets like the Creative Independent does. And when you have that stream of fresh or peer-related content coming through all the time, all you have to do is check it on a lunch break, when you're in line for coffee, and keep being inundated by that in small periods of time, and then you know what you're working against. Because you always want to know if you're doing something bold, you want to be aware to what degree of boldness it is and what's already out there.
Yeah, I love research. I love thinking about different ways to go like that one level deeper in what we're using, what's available. So when you're talking about Twitter lists, that's something that is really important, is thinking about what's available to you and then use it. Like if something's available to you, you should be spending your time to use it. I love that you talk about learning what is stale, and then also like finding out what you can do to kind of take it to that one level. What are people doing already? And Twitter lists are a great resource for that.
Yeah, I always learn better when I see a bad example. So it's so helpful to be able to take those tweets, and my team has a DM thread where we will find a tweet that another brand did that isn't good, and we share it among each other, not to be mean, we're not going to be public about it, but
Sure.
when we're editing later to be like, oh, why did this not work?
Right.
Additionally, some of the best marketing doesn't come from marketers. I'm a writer. I spend all my outside of work time writing. And so I know a lot of poets and actors and comedians who are promoting their events all the time or their new book tour. And sometimes the way that an artist talks about their gallery opening, they'll use an interesting technique. And I'd be like, I'm stealing that. So having private lists on Twitter, on Sprout Social, is a great way to just have your constant pipeline of inspiration.
Yeah, use what's available. All right, let's move on to the next question here. And that is, what's one trick for creating social copy that will get a response? As a writer, this one's right up your alley.
Yeah, I love, you ask a question. It's the same way as how you get a response in a conversation. Whenever a conversation feels like it's going flat, you ask the person, where are you from? What do you do for fun? What's something you're excited about in the next week or so? And it is no different in trying to generate conversation on. People love sharing their opinions, especially on Twitter. And so when you give them a chance to share their opinion with you, whether that be something like a poll, which makes it even more quantitative, or a simple question like, what are you up to this weekend? How did you like this last campaign? What type of content do you want to see from us? What time of day do you want us to tweet? There are all these things that marketers are wondering, but they have the world's focus group on Twitter. And so you can just ask them and learn, but also get a lot of replies.
Yeah. So it's funny. I think we say the same thing too, which is that Twitter is the world's largest focus group. When we talk about Sprout's listening tool, we always talk about like the people that are willing to come out and give their information and give information around what they find interesting, what is their sentiment around it. People go to Twitter to say these things. They go to Twitter to share their opinions. So it's
incredibly generous. It's incredibly generous.
Yeah. I love it. So Let's move on to the next question. This one's going to be really good too, because I like in our practice session we actually talked about this, and I just liked your answer, which is, how do you empower your team through social?
I am so lucky to be on a yes team. So with the experimental content, again, I think that's really important. This is the first job I've ever had where we can justify a project by saying this is our experimental project for the quarter. And that brings in enough faith that we do not have to quantify it every single week. And along with that, I think it bodes a really creative energy in the office, especially our community manager, Lindsay Bruce, who's behind Twitter Business, does an incredible job of this.
Mm-hmm.
We're always down to experiment. And the first place that we will experiment a marketing idea, because of course with Twitter Business, we have a blog, we have business.twitter.com, we have tons of email campaigns. So we have all these other places to do this. We have the new podcast Character Count that I'm the host of. But the first place where we will experiment is at Twitter Business. So one thing we came up with recently is my team likes to try and throw me off with rapid fire content curation. So we had 2 stacks of cards. One was businesses, types of businesses that would likely be on Twitter. And the other stack was all types of events that were happening in May. And I had to go through on camera and match the event that was happening in May with the business and come up with the Twitter content idea for that thing.
Okay.
And we just thought it would be fun and wanted to see if I could really do it.
Yeah.
And so we did that, and it was about 5 minutes, and then we edited it down and did a video and sent it out on the handle. And just being able to do things like that makes your job more fun.
Yeah.
So if nothing else, and I believe that video performed like medium, it was fine. It didn't blow up, it didn't flop. It was just like, oh, that's fine. But it was a lot more fun for us to get to try the idea out and see. And who knows, it could have blown up and we could have had an entire new series that was extremely low budget and fun for us to work on.
Yeah. It's really important to remember we work in a fun industry. We work in a fun field. It's exciting, and we get to do things every day. We get to create. That's our jobs. We get paid to create, and it's so much fun to be able to do that. And so empowering teams, social teams specifically, is giving people freedom to have fun. Of course, you should have brand guidelines, and of course, you should be working with like your design teams and having other people have input. But it's such a great reminder we're fun. It's fun what we do.
Yeah, for our first episode of Character Count, we have Monterey Bay Aquarium on there, and Patrick Webster is their community manager. He's incredible, and his main takeaway was, I asked him, what is the one thing you would tell someone to guide their social team? And he said, let them play.
Yeah.
And whenever you're asking a community manager to have to approve every single thing that they send up, by the time it gets through everyone's approval, the joke is gone. The motivation Monday has ended. So it's really important to start early, give clear parameters, clear brand voice guidelines, and just a whole lot of trust. And then let them play. Let it be a fun industry, as you're saying, because it can also not be.
Yeah. It's work. It's still work. Let's talk the last question here. This kind of fits into what we've talked about in question 5, which is, how do you elevate your strategy through creative?
Yeah, so add it. Every tweet, if you add a picture, it's going to perform better. If you add a GIF, it's going to perform better. If you add a video, it's going to perform a lot better. So we're always asking ourselves, if something it feels like a piece of creative, of richer media is appropriate, how do we add it? How do we create it? And so a great example would be this December, we were creating holiday content. And obviously it's the holidays, things are slowing down, at least for my team a bit. We have a bit more time to play. And we wanted to create stuff that was interesting to look at and would be good examples for our clients about how they can do super low budget holiday content that you create in one afternoon. And so one of ours was, again, like our community manager, Lindsay Bruce, we want her to be able to sign off for a few days because it's a holiday. And so we just made it really clear. We had a tweet where we said, thank you so much for all the tweets this year. We'll see you in 2019. And then it was a GIF of me with a wooden bird putting it in a present box and closing it. And that was basically our out of office. And we did that entire gift shoot with about 30 other gifts that we used throughout December, January, February in 2 hours in a conference room with a green screen and a camera. And just by doing that, the lo-fi content just looks so human, so approachable, and you're walking the walk. You know, brands are hopefully going to look at us and say, "Oh, I could make that," and then do the same thing, and then make an out of office thing to let people know that we're humans too, and we're leaving, and we all hope that everyone else takes a little bit of a break as well.
I love that. I love that for two reasons. One is humanity, but then also I love that you talked about finding those examples that you love, especially when we're talking about something creative. It's very tempting that when we're wanting to be creative to go out and find something brand new, to be something brand new. But finding examples of something that's at least in the arena that you want to, in which you would like to play, that's really helpful to help you then elevate yourself and take your game to that next level. Yeah,
you can't let perfect be the enemy of good.
Yes.
And you have to, it's easy to look at places that have a lot bigger budget and a lot bigger teams and want to compete with them. But they're looking at you and wondering how they can make such lo-fi, hacky, warm, human feeling content. So start where you're at. The main thing is just to tweet and just to publish. You can't look at the data for tweets that don't exist. And you can create a strategy for off of analytics that you don't have. So get out there, tweet, even if it's not the perfect thing, it can be your starting point.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thanks for all of your answers on these 6 questions, Joe. All right, we're going to bring in Olivia here, and let's hand it over to her to gain some more insights to see if you all had anything to say. What do you have for us, Olivia?
The chat was a little bit slow today, but shout out to one of our biggest fans, Audrey. We definitely see you. I definitely want to call out, too, that I love what Joe said during Q1, that if you aren't letting data guide you, then you'll end up wasting time and resources. Yeah. And we've definitely been thinking about this more and more on our team, and have been using the tag report in Sprout to identify what types of content our audience wants to see more of. We use the data to elevate our own strategies, but we also share it back with our creative team to help inform their direction. Feel free to mention me on Twitter after the chat if you're interested in learning more about it. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to Twitter Business here. When I first met Joe at Twitter HQ during our Sprout Sessions live event, he shared Twitter's 2019 calendar with us, which I have right here. The calendars really highlight moments that receive the most impressions on Twitter, and it's such a useful tool to help plan and inform your strategies through data. We'll make sure to share the link to the calendar in the sidebar chat and over on Twitter too. Is there anything else you wanted to add here, Joe?
Oh, yes, I would love to talk about that calendar, Olivia, because it is a data success story. So that was born from us being, community managers and empathetic marketers who are constantly thinking, oh gosh, what do I tweet about? And we're at Twitter, and so it feels extra pressury to not know. And so we were creating our own calendars, and then we realized, of course, other people could use these. So we started publishing them on one month off basis. If you scroll through the Twitter business blog, you will find our old calendars from several years ago. Every single one of them looks completely different. We were clearly figuring out as we went along. Then we found our template, and then they looked the same for 6 months. And then last year, for the first time, we published a paper calendar. So the full year, people could have it on their desk, and you say, okay, June is coming up. What am I going to tweet about? And then there's your content calendar right there. Everything included on it is something that gets thousands or millions of impressions. So the stuff that there's really going to be a conversation about. And the digital download is still available as well. So I would hope everyone can download the calendar, and then we'll have a lot of help when they're trying to plan their next content calendar.
Yeah. Those calendars were really creative.
Yeah. And the data guided us there. It wasn't really our idea. It was the crowd's idea because people loved it and they kept clicking and asking for more. So we gave them more.
Yeah, that leads perfectly into really my next insight about developing creative. By looking at your data, you can better understand what types of content spark emotion with your audience. And so some of you listening might have design teams behind you, and for others, you really are that design team. But no matter what your resources are, the tip I really want to share is that after you know what type of content your audience wants, you can really prioritize the creation of it with your team because you have the data to back it up. And for example, we know that Sprout's audience loves to see the illustrations on our blogs that our design team creates. So we worked with some of our designers to develop more social-friendly illustrations, like Instagram story versions of these, to keep the designs feeling fresh. Again, if you want to learn more about how we're doing this, feel free to tweet at us.
Yeah.
Any other tips here, Joe? I think the calendar was a great example, but.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. As a writer, people would be surprised how many words I cut from our content. But the fact is that your eyes move faster than your brain. And so creating bold visual content is an incredible way to create brain consistency and grab people's attention, especially on a place like Twitter that moves so quickly. And just being able to change the color on something or add a filter that has a seasonal shade or tone is a great way to make things fresh and keep it very light and easy. I know that we really like Adobe Spark's free trial as well as Canva, our 2 free resources that we use a lot to create bold design voices.
Awesome.
I love it. Thanks for those tips on those resources. Thanks also for your answers, your insights, and thank you for joining us today. This was a lot of fun. You had some really great action items and some viewpoints, and I loved your insights.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I hope everyone got a lot of tips and they will feel bold to go out there and tweet. Don't worry about it being a good tweet. You got to have the bad tweets to have the good tweets.
Yeah, got to start somewhere. I love it. Thank you. Thank you again for joining. Thanks to you, Olivia, for all of your insights. And thanks to all of you for watching and for joining in. Remember, you will be able to access the recording of this session right here on our YouTube channel. We're going over to Twitter now to get the chat started over there. Just a quick note that we're actually going to have the Twitter business handle interacting with us today. So feel free to @Joe on Twitter, @TwitterBusiness. On behalf of Sprout, we want to thank all of you for attending this chat. Keep your eyes peeled. We're going to be back next month in July. And feel free to continue the conversation on social media using #SproutChat.
We'll see you on Twitter.
We'll see you next month.